Hi, I'm Nick Taylor and I'm presenting our DIS 2021 paper, Prototyping Things, reflecting on unreported objects of design research for IoT. Prototyping is a core component of HCI research, and in particular, the creation of designed things is a defining characteristic of design research. This process is messy. We explore a lot of different directions, many of which don't pan out, but which still inform the directions that we do take. We tend then to try and draw a straight line through that messiness to craft a clean research narrative that omits much of the exploration. Relatively recent developments like the DIS pictorial track and the RTD conference series have helped to expose some of this messiness, but in general it's still underrepresented in HCI discourse. With this paper, we want to shine a light on our own research through design practice. We'll talk about 3 projects, all of them focusing on the Internet of Things across a time where it merged into the public consciousness. With IoT, of course, the things themselves, the prototypes we used, take center stage. All of the prototypes that we'll talk about were used at early or intermediate stages of the project. They were not early versions of some later, more resolved product, but played different roles that were still critical in informing the subsequent research in less direct ways. By doing that, we want to contribute to the visibility of RTD methods in HCI, but also to understand how those methods have responded to IoT in particular. My co-authors, John Rogers, Martin Skelly, and Lorraine Clark, will talk about each of the 3 projects.
Hi, I'm John Rogers and I was co-investigator on the Connected High Street project that aimed to understand and propose new roles for the IoT in the future life of the High Street. We created a suite of prototypes called the Minions that presented what capabilities and capacities that the IoT could have in simplified form. We put these prototypes in front of independent shopkeepers to foster a conversation about what they would want from the IoT in their shop. Each minion performed a simple function that borrowed from existing retail interactions. One of these, a till receipt printer, would print text sent from a web form on a phone. These ideas, and particularly this one around the till receipt printer, resonated with the shopkeepers. And this led us to create a series of internet-connected small printers for sending simple messages. A social network for shops, if you like. We called this the Tapwriter Network, which we deployed in a number of independent shops in Dundee for about a month. With the Tapwriters actually deployed in the shops, we started to see interesting behaviour emerge across the network. For example, shops sending each other discount vouchers or placing coffee orders. It gave us a real sense of what life might be like for these shops and the future of IoT. While in longer term the Tapwriter use declined, what it did do is help us to form a really fantastic relationship with one of the participants that we went on to work with for another year on a different part of the project.
Hi, I'm Martin Skelly, and I developed the provocative voice prototypes as a researcher in the OpenIoT studio. These prototypes were developed as part of a project with Mozilla exploring newly popular smart speakers and emerging privacy concerns around creepy behaviours. The Mozilla staff we were working with was composed of 2 groups. One group was made up of research and communication experts, knowledgeable about internet health issues and advocacy, and the other group was composed of engineers who were experts in machine learning and voice interaction. We wanted to find ways of accessing knowledge of both of these groups and using it to inform the development of the project. 3 prototypes were created. The agent sat on an Amazon Alexa and detected when it was activated, displaying information about how it worked. The actor made exaggerated responses to directional sound input, emphasizing how speakers were listening, and the advisor posed questions about privacy and security and compared your responses to other people's. Use of humour and contrast between the prototypes was really important in this project. Humour balanced some of the more problematic issues being raised and acted as an icebreaker within workshops that could lead us to deeper conversations. The value of physical prototyping was made very clear when we presented early sketches of these concepts to engineers in a presentation. The conversation quickly got lost in the technical challenges around them rather than focusing on the wider issues, whereas actually creating physical representations of the concepts helped us to zoom out and have a very different conversation.
Hi, I'm Lorraine Clark. I developed the Deconstructing Biometric Prototypes with Martin Skelly as part of a project imagining and exploring what future IoT technologies might be if they were designed with and by people living in remote communities in rural India. First, we wanted to understand the current context and point towards the use of biometric technology in India's centralised identification system known as Aadhaar. To do this, we built a series of prototypes that each explored single biometric technology in a way that allowed people to interrogate it and try to understand what it was sensing. One of the prototypes explored facial recognition, where people could take a photo of themselves, which was sent to a Microsoft facial recognition API. It sent back information about people from their photos, such as their age, gender, if they were wearing glasses or smiling, for example. The information was printed out using a built-in thermal printer. We also provided props like fake moustaches so people could try and manipulate the results through playful exploration. Another prototype was a fingerprint reader, which we provided modelling clay and latex for, so people could create fake fingerprints and explore the technology's limitations. Although to some extent these prototypes sought to problematise biometric technology, we found much more positive narratives emerging around them. We saw people taking parts of the deconstructed technology prototypes and using them to construct new stories. For example, the fingerprint reader prompted a discussion about how it might help authenticate and protect small coffee growers, while another prototype measuring heart rate prompted a discussion with a wildlife biologist about whether it might work for elephants. These highlighted uses for IoT that were relevant for different parts of life in rural India. Providing props alongside the prototypes allowed people to explore and interrogate these technologies.
There are some common themes that we start to see across these projects, and while these are not unique to our work, designing in the context of IoT has caused them to manifest themselves in some interesting ways. One of the most common and successful techniques that we've used is breaking down IoT into more understandable components. IoT is a vastly complex socio-technical system, but this allowed us to focus the discussion onto particular technologies, behaviours and issues. While this had a practical benefit in focusing conversations, it also had a powerful effect in enabling people to reconstruct IoT into different shapes that were meaningful to them. There are no shortage of stories being told about the future of IoT, but these approaches supported participants in telling their own, very different stories that were important in shaping the subsequent work in each project. As IoT reaches a wider range of contexts, we need to engage with a much wider range of participants. These projects engaged with people from very different levels of expertise and experience and from very different backgrounds. Prototypes used very early in the project helped to communicate something about ourselves as researchers and designers, about the way that we worked, and even about our sense of humour, building human connections. But they also helped us to prompt people to share something about themselves, but also to come out of their comfort zones a little bit and engage with something they were unfamiliar with. A lived experience with a real or seemingly real prototype was a powerful way of creating rich discussions. On prototypes, Sanders and Stappers talk about their ability to confront the world, but when designing with IoT, we have to confront a world that changes rapidly and look ahead to future worlds that might arrive even over the course of a single project. As the IoT landscape has changed, we've needed to adapt with it, finding ways to represent increasingly sophisticated technologies. With the typewriters, we could build something that reflected real products of the time, like Berg's little printer, but we had to use more speculative approaches to explore voice assistants. The goals similarly changed, from simply introducing IoT and its capabilities to shining a light on some of the issues that were emerging from a rapidly maturing industry. And finally, none of these projects aimed to solve problems or to guide us directly towards a solution. The issues around IoT are hugely complex, and attempts to do so would invariably fall flat. Instead, we've aimed to expand the discussion around complex problems like the decline of the high street, the proliferation of inscrutable devices, and digital colonialism. These prototypes expand the problem-solving capacity of the stakeholders involved in this project, to have new types of conversation and to approach problems from different perspectives. I hope that we've been able to expose a little of our research through design practice by reflecting back on and sharing some of the prototypes that we haven't previously written about and the roles that they played. As always, we dive into much more detail in the paper, so please do give it a look. I'd like to finish just by thanking our co-authors, collaborators and participants who made the work possible, and our funders, EPSRC, Mozilla Foundation, and the Scottish Funding Council's Global Challenges Research Fund. Thanks for listening.